Have you ever spent the night in a haunted place? I did. And let me tell you, it was the scariest night of my life. Make sure you stick with me as I share my spooky adventure. And don't forget to subscribe and tell me where you're listening from. Plus, I have something special just for you. If you want to lose weight while you sleep, there's a super easy supplement you can check out. Click the link in the description below to learn more. It was late at night when I arrived at the old hotel. The sign said the Whispering Pines Hotel, but it looked dark and spooky. The wind howled as I pushed open the heavy wooden door. There was a soft creaking sound, and my heart raced. I stepped inside, and the air was cold despite it being a warm night outside. The hotel lobby had an old wooden counter, and a bell sat quietly on the desk. I rang the bell, and the loud sound echoed in the empty room. A sleepy man appeared, looking tired but strange. He wore a tall hat and had a long coat. "Welcome. You must be here for the night," he said in a whisper. I nodded, feeling a shiver go down my spine. He gave me a key that looked rusty and old. The number on it read 13. I felt uneasy, but I didn't want to seem scared. I took the key, said thank you, and started toward the creaky stairs. As I climbed up, the stairs groaned under my feet. The walls were dark and covered with pictures of people I didn't know. Their eyes seemed to follow me as I walked. I finally found my room and opened the door. It was dimly lit, with faded wallpaper and a cold breeze coming through the window. I shut the door, but the sound of the wind outside made me nervous. I tried to relax, so I sat on the bed. It felt old and bumpy. Just as I was about to close my eyes, I heard a soft noise, like whispering voices coming from the hallway. Curiosity got the better of me, so I opened the door slightly. I peered out into the dark hallway. The air was thick, and I felt a chill. No one was there. My heart pounded in my chest. I wanted to be brave, but the whispers grew louder. They sounded like someone calling my name. "Come play with us," they said softly. I froze. I wanted to run back into my room, but my feet felt glued to the floor. Suddenly, I heard laughter from down the hall, echoing eerily. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and fear gripped me. I turned and hurried back inside, locking the door tightly behind me. I wanted to hide under the blanket and forget the strange voices, but I felt they might still come for me. I pulled the blanket up to my chin and tried to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. The whispers continued, tickling the edges of my mind. I glanced at the window and saw a figure standing outside in the moonlight. It looked like a child with pale skin and glowing eyes. I gasped and ducked down, praying it would go away. After what felt like hours, the whispers stopped and silence filled the room. I gathered my courage and peeked out again. The hallway was dark and empty. I knew I had to get out of there, but my feet felt heavy like they were stuck in mud. Then, a loud bang startled me. It came from the room next to mine. I sprinted to the door and pressed my ear against it. The knocking continued, louder and louder, like someone wanted to get out. My heart raced as I backed away. Just as I did, the door creaked open, revealing nothing but darkness. I took a deep breath and knew I couldn't just stand there. I had to know what was happening, even though I felt scared. I opened my door carefully and stepped into the hallway, my heart pounding with every step. As I moved down the hall, the air grew colder, and I could feel the presence of something watching me. I glanced back at my room one last time before I rounded the corner. Then I saw it, the ghostly figure of a child standing at the end of the hallway, watching me with those eerie, glowing eyes. Fear rushed through me as I turned to run. I stumbled down the stairs, my heart racing. The wind howled even louder now, and shadows danced around me. I didn't stop until I reached the lobby, breathless and terrified. The old man behind the desk looked up and smiled strangely. "Did you enjoy your stay?" he asked, as if he already knew the answer. I felt chills run down my spine as I looked into his eyes. "I want to leave," I shouted, feeling panic take over. He just chuckled softly, which only made me feel more afraid. "Many have come, but few leave." I ran out of the hotel, the night air hitting me like a wave. I didn't look back until I was far away. I knew I would never return to the Whispering Pines Hotel, but the echoes of that night were still alive in my mind. As I hurried away, I could hear whispers carried by the wind, calling me back. Come back, they would say. We want to play. The thought made my skin crawl. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me, something that wanted me to turn around and look back. Night fell deeper as I scampered down the lonely road. The moon hung above me, casting long shadows that danced and flickered strangely. Every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig made me jump, my heart racing. My thoughts spiraled as I replayed the events in my mind. What was that child doing at the end of the hallway? And that man at the front desk? Why did he smile like that? Just as I thought I had escaped the eerie hotel, I heard something behind me. It sounded like soft, hurried footsteps slowly getting closer. I whipped around, my pulse pounding in my ears, but nothing was there. For a moment, I stood still, looking into the dark abyss where shadows seeped and twisted. The whispers returned, growing louder, and I could feel ball creeping up my throat. I started to run again, and that's when I noticed a flickering light coming from the hotel. A soft glow pulsed through the windows, illuminating the darkness around it. I felt drawn to it, my curiosity battling with my fear. Against my better judgment, I approached the hotel once more, creeping along the cracked pavement and keeping my eyes on the glowing light. The voices became clearer. They seemed to be saying my name now, echoing in a chilling harmony, and I felt a pull deep in my stomach. Join us, it whispered. I hesitated, but before I could turn and flee, I accidentally kicked a small rock, startling myself. The noise echoed through the night. Suddenly, the light flickered out, plunging the hotel back into darkness, and a chill swept through me. The darkness seemed alive, almost breathing. Then, the door creaked open slowly, revealing a slice of darkness that felt like an invitation and a warning at the same time. I could see a shadowy figure standing in the doorway. It was tall and thin, with a long coat that draped over its legs like smoke. My heart sank as dread filled my chest. Come inside, the figure said in a silky but unsettling voice. I could barely see its face, but I felt its gaze piercing through the darkness, watching me. My legs felt like stones, and I wanted to run again, but my body wouldn't move. I felt trapped in this moment, caught between my instincts and the strange allure of the shadow. I took a cautious step back, and just as I did, I heard a high-pitched giggle behind me. I spun around, the hairs on my arms standing up. The child I had seen before was there again, closer than before, grinning up at me with those glowing eyes. I stumbled back, shocked and terrified. The air around me felt heavy, and it seemed the shadows were creeping closer. Don't be scared. We just want to play, the child said, its voice sweet yet chilling. The playground, I had a magi. Ned felt twisted and wrong. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it over my own thoughts. I turned back to the entrance, ready to flee, but the figure in the doorway had moved closer, now blocking my escape. You can't leave, it whispered, its voice slithering through the night. You belong to us now. I bolted, pushing past the shadowy figure and into the hotel again, where the warmth vanished, replaced by the cold grip of fear. As I ran, the shadows twisted and stretched, looking like fingers trying to grab me. I knew I had to find a way out before they caught me. I raced down the candlelit hallway, the whispers crescendoing around me. I looked to my left and saw doors swinging open on their own, as if inviting me into their dark depths. I had to make a choice, to explore the rooms or keep running. I could feel the walls closing in on me, so I picked the first door I found and flung it open, crashing inside. The room was filled with dusty, old furniture and cobwebs hanging like ghosts in the corners. But there was no time to think. I turned to lock the door, breathing heavily. The whispers faded to the background as I leaned against the door, trying to calm my racing heart. My eyes darted around the room, searching for anything that might help. Suddenly, I noticed a mirror hanging on the wall. It was covered in layers of dust, but something about it was strange. When I looked into it, I didn't see my own reflection. Instead, there was the hotel lobby, and I could see the old man behind the desk still smiling that eerie grin. I felt panic rising in my throat. What is happening? I whispered to myself. The whispers returned, swirling around me, mixing with a laughter that chilled my bones. Shadows began to creep across the floor of the room, moving toward me, as if they were seeking me out. I turned to the door as I heard soft knocks. Thud, thud, thud. Let us in, a voice echoed, sounding like multiple whispers layered together. My hands trembled as I tried to keep the door shut. The knocks grew louder and more frantic as the shadows danced closer. Let us play, the voices sang sweetly. Don't you want to play with us? My breath escaped me as I quickly searched for a window. I had to get out. I rushed to the window and threw it open, the night air rushing in. I looked down and saw that I was on the second floor, but I didn't think of the height. I just needed to escape. With no other choice, I climbed out and hopped down, landing with a soft thud on the ground below. I was outside, yet the hotel loomed over me, looking ominous and full of secrets. I didn't feel safe, but the whispers were now dulled, like they were afraid of the light that came with the stars. But as I turned to run, I saw the figure of the child standing again at the window, watching me. The pale face filled with that haunting grin and glowing eyes seemed to wink at me. I shivered and took off down the path, the hotel receding behind me, but not without that feeling of dread trailing closely behind. The further I ran, the more the whispers faded. Yet, even through the distance, I could still hear the faint sound of laughter echoing into the night. I didn't dare look back anymore. The hotel felt like a dream that would haunt me, a memory that would cling to me no matter where I went. As I finally stumbled away from the Whispering Pines Hotel, I knew that something dark and twisted had awakened inside, a mystery that would never let me go. The night air was thick and heavy, wrapping around me like a blanket of fear. I rushed forward, my breath coming out in quick gasps. Each step felt like a race against time, as if the shadows of the hotel were chasing me, eager to pull me back into their cold embrace. I could still hear the faint echoes of laughter and whispers bouncing off the trees. They made my heart race faster, pulsing against my chest like a drum. Suddenly, I heard a sound behind me. It was soft at first, like a distant rustle of leaves, but then it grew louder, a rhythmic shuffling, like footsteps trailing behind me. I turned my head, and there, at the edge of the tree line, was the glowing figure of the child again. It stood still, watching me with that same twisted grin on its face. "Come play with us," it called out, its voice sweet, yet tinged with a sinister echo that sent chills running down my spine. The air around me felt electric, charged with dread. I quickened my pace, pushing myself to run faster, desperate to put as much distance between me and that child as possible. But no matter how fast I ran, that sense of being chased lingered. I could feel the presence of something lurking in the shadows just behind me, maybe the child, or something much worse. I remembered those glowing eyes staring at me from inside the hotel, and it made me shudder. As I pushed through the underbrush, branches snagged at my clothes, and thorns dug into my skin, but I barely felt the pain. All I could feel was the overwhelming fear that clawed at me. I stumbled into a small clearing, where moonlight pierced through the trees, casting ghostly shadows upon the ground. I paused for a moment, panting heavily, hoping to catch my breath. But I could sense that I was not alone. The shadows in the trees seemed to shift and breathe. I scanned the area, my heart pounding. Then, I caught sight of something out of the corner of my eye, a dark shape moving silently through the trees, circling me. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice breaking. I regretted it immediately, feeling like an easy target now. The laughter returned, surrounding me, echoing off the trees, wrapping me in a web of sound. Out of the darkness, another figure emerged, this one taller and more menacing. It moved with an unnatural grace, as though it glided rather than walked. Its face was obscured in shadows, but I could see its eyes, glimmering like fireflies, flickering with a hunger that made my stomach drop. "Join us," it said, its voice smooth like silk but coated in cruelty. I felt paralyzed, trapped in this horrifying moment. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I was frozen, caught between fear and the unexplainable urge to know what it wanted. "Please leave me alone." I begged, my voice trembling. But the only answer was the collection of whispers that echoed around me, growing louder and more frantic. The trees swayed as if they were alive, and I could hear the sound of leaves rustling violently. Suddenly, the tall figure lunged forward, its movements swift and unpredictable. I snapped back to reality and turned to dash away, but before I could fully escape, the darkness closed in on me. I barely had time to react when I felt a cold hand grab my arm, its grip like ice. A surge of panic flooded through me as I twisted and pulled, trying to escape. The figure laughed softly, a chilling sound that sent shivers down my spine. "You can't run from us, not here," it whispered, and in that moment, I felt the weight of the shadows pressing down on me. In desperation, I remembered the old hotel. There had to be a way to end this nightmare. I was certain that if I faced my fears there, perhaps I could break whatever hold they had on me. My feet moved before my mind could catch up. I wrenched my arm free and sprinted back toward the hotel, ignoring the new cuts and scratches from the branches that reached for me. The path seemed endless as I tore through the trees, but the whispers followed me, taunting and teasing. "You'll come back to us. We won't let you go," they sang as if they had all the time in the world. Finally, the silhouette of the hotel structure loomed ahead, still shadowed in darkness, but now welcoming in a twisted way. I pushed the door open again, almost expecting to face the figures immediately. Inside, the lobby looked unchanged but felt eerily different. The air was thicker, heavy with whispers that seemed to swirl around me, wrapping around my thoughts. The old man stood at the counter, still smiling that unnatural smile, as if he had been waiting for me the whole time. "I see you've returned," he said, his voice echoing softly. "You can't resist. The shadows are hungry for you." I felt fear grip my heart again, but this time, I had made up my mind. "I'm here to end this," I shouted, despite the way my voice shook. I took a step towards him, my resolve steady, despite the chilling laughter that rang out from behind me, filling the room with an angry buzz. Without a second thought, I ran to the room where I had seen that mirror. I took deep breaths, fighting against the panic battling inside me. The laughter grew louder as I dashed toward the looming door, the shadows in the corners growing darker and more crouched as if they were waiting for my next move. As I burst into the room, the darkness engulfed me momentarily, and for a second, all I could see was black. I felt a tingling sensation running through my body, reminding me of the cold grip I had felt earlier. But then, the whispers grew quiet, and I found the mirror again, its dusty surface reflecting my terrified face. This time, though, I could feel a connection. I was determined to confront whatever lay on the other side. I raised my hand and touched the cool surface. An electric jolt shot through me, and my reflection began to swirl and change. The hotel began to fade away from the edges of my vision, and suddenly, I was pulled suddenly into the mirror, as if I were stepping into a different world. The cold air surrounded me, and for a moment, I felt weightless. I was somewhere else, a twisted version of the hallway I had just fled. Colors seemed dark and muted, yet the laughter echoed louder, now coming from mere inches away. I could hear the shadowy figures moving just behind me, their footsteps lightly touching the floor as they drew near. The glow from their eyes cut through the darkness, growing brighter, illuminating the depths of this eerie realm. "You've come to play, just like the others," the child's voice said, mingling with the deep rumble of laughter echoing off the walls. With a sudden rush of adrenaline, I turned and faced them. "No!" I shouted, my voice firm. "I won't be like the others." Their laughter momentarily halted, and their shadows recoiled slightly, as if they were taken back by my sudden confidence. "Then what do you want?" the tall figure whispered, its tone somewhat curious yet menacing. "I want to break this curse. I will not become a part of you," I declared, feeling the power of my words surge through me. The laughter returned, but it was different now. It sounded almost uncertain. Shadows flickered and swayed, but there was a hint of confusion in their movements. "You think you can escape?" they asked, their voices swirling around me, momentarily losing their unity. With each word, I felt the shadows draw closer, their cold presence pressing against me, almost testing the strength of my resolve. I remembered the child's face, those glowing eyes filled with mischief and malice. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, willing to confront whatever came next, ready to fight for my freedom. I could hear the voices hissing. You can't resist the darkness. But as I stood in the center of the swirling shadows, I felt something shift within me, a spark of light that fought against the encroaching dark. I am stronger than you think, I shouted, unleashing my defiance into the swirling void. The shadows shrieked, their voices rising in panic. And for a moment, I could see the hotel flickering in the distance, like a lantern in the fog. I took another step, raising my hands and feeling a strange energy flow through me as I confronted the darkness. You will not take me. I choose my fate. With every ounce of strength I had, I pushed against the darkness, willing it to retreat. The shadows quivered, their forms seeming to dissolve in the light that grew stronger inside me. Suddenly, the laughter turned to wails as the dark figures began to shrink away, retreating into the corners, fading into the walls. You will regret this, one of the figures shouted as it disappeared into the gloom. But I didn't feel fear anymore. Instead, I felt empowerment, freedom washing over me like a warm tide. Holding that light within me, I turned back toward the mirror, ready to make my escape, to break free from the hotel that had held me captive for far too long. I approached the mirror, its surface rippling as it welcomed me back. I touched it, and an intense rush surged through me. Suddenly, I was pulled into the mirror, feeling the world twist and turn around me until I found myself back in the hotel room. The voices faded into whispers, and the shadows retreated, leaving me breathless and trembling. Something deep inside told me that I had won a battle, but the war wasn't over yet. I could still hear the faint echoes of laughter behind me, lingering like a haunting melody. With newfound determination, I stepped out of the room and back into the hallway. I wasn't leaving just yet. I needed answers. I needed to understand why this place was so twisted. I marched back to the lobby, my heart racing, but my mind sharp. I had to confront the old man again, the keeper of this dark, haunted hotel. When I reached the counter, his smile was gone, replaced with a face hard as stone, revealing that he knew something I didn't. You think you can escape your fate? He asked, his voice low and rumbling like a storm approaching. I will find a way, I said firmly, feeling the strength of my words. This ends here. He chuckled, but it wasn't a kind laugh. You are brave, I'll give you that. But bravery can be as dangerous as fear. I straightened my back, refusing to back down. I want to know the truth about this place. Why are those shadows after me? What do they want? The man's gaze turned cold and calculating as he looked down at the polished wood of the desk. This hotel has a history of luring those who are lost, those who seek something they cannot find. It feeds on fear and doubt, drawing in those who have unresolved issues. The shadows are not just figments. They are souls trapped in the dark. My stomach twisted at his words. Souls? I echoed, feeling sick. What happens to them? He looked back up, his eyes meeting mine, and something in his expression sparked a flicker of sympathy. Not all souls can find peace. Some cling to their bitterness and pain, and they don't want to let go. They seek new hosts to share their torment. My heart sank as I put the pieces together. Those voices I had heard, the laughter, the figures, they were lost souls, trapped in a never-ending cycle of fear and despair. And now, they wanted to pull me into their darkness. I felt a weight settle on my chest, but I knew I could not waver. I won't be your next host, I declared, the fire in my spirit igniting again. Somehow, I will free them. The man smirked, his eyes now filled with amusement. You think you can save them? It's not that simple. They have to want to be free. They must confront their own pasts. I thought about that for a moment, realizing that the shadows had reflected my fears. What if I faced mine? What if I confronted my own darkness? I took a deep breath, feeling the determination set deep in me. Then I will make them face the truth, I said firmly. I will not let them suffer anymore. He tilted his head, clearly intrigued by my resolve. You have a strong spirit, but know this. The darkness will fight back. I'm ready, I replied without hesitation, my heart racing with both fear and determination. He gestured towards the hallway. Down there lies the source of their torment, he said, his voice low and steady. But remember, shadows can't be faced with fear. They thrive on it. I nodded, feeling a mix of fear and courage building inside me. The hallway stretched before me, long and dark, with doors lining each side. The old wallpaper peeled away in places, revealing dark stains that seemed to pulse. My heart raced as I took the first step forward, and the air grew colder, sending shivers down my spine. Each step echoed in the silence, and with each echo, I felt the shadows watching. The air was thick and heavy, like I was walking through a fog of despair. I glanced at the first door on my right. It was slightly ajar, a dim light flickering from within. Curiosity pulled me closer, and I pushed it open. The room was filled with what looked like old photographs scattered across the floor, faces peering up at me with vacant expressions. Time stood still as I stepped inside, and the door creaked ominously behind me, closing shut. As I leaned down to examine the photos, a chill slithered through the air. The faces in the photos moved, their eyes filling with a haunting sorrow. I felt a wave of sadness wash over me, and the whispers returned, sinking into my mind. Help us, they echoed, a soft plea that resonated in my chest. I froze, understanding their despair. These were the lost souls, the shadows trapped in a cycle of sorrow. I picked up one of the photos, and as I turned it over, I gasped. The name scrawled on the back read, Evelyn, and it was dated over 50 years ago. Suddenly, a soft sob filled the air, cutting through the silence like a knife. It felt close, surrounding me. I spun around, but the room remained empty. Panic clawed at my throat. Evelyn? I whispered, hoping this ghost would offer me something to help. A figure flickered at the corner of my vision, but when I looked again, nothing was there. The sobbing continued, compelling me to search the room. I noticed a small door at the far end, half hidden by shadows. Without thinking, I moved toward it, drawn by the desperate sounds. As I approached, the sobbing turned to wails, filled with grief and heartache. I could feel the intensity rising around me, like an emotional storm brewing. Reaching for the doorknob, I hesitated, fear gripping my heart. What if it's a trap? I thought, but I pushed it open anyway. The door creaked and swung wide, revealing a long, narrow space that felt suffocating. The walls were lined with more photographs, but these were different. They showed moments of pain, lost loves, broken dreams, and shattered lives. I stepped inside, my heart pounding as I felt the sorrow in each image wash over me. Suddenly, a figure materialized at the end of the corridor. It was a woman, her face twisted in sorrow, tears streaming down her cheeks. Help me, she pleaded, her voice echoing against the walls. I can't find peace. My heart ached for her. What happened to you? I called out, feeling a connection that urged me to step closer. I was wronged, she cried, the sadness thickening the air. I couldn't let go of my pain. I lost everything. Now I'm trapped here. The shadows in the room seemed to thicken around her, swirling with her sorrow, and I felt the temperature drop. I took another step, desperate to reach her. How can I help you? Face the darkness, she replied, her eyes suddenly sharp with a fierce determination. You must face what lies within your own heart. Only then can you help me and the others. Before I could respond, a cold wind swept through the corridor, extinguishing the flickering light. The shadows in the room surged, wrapping around me in a tightening grip. I stood frozen, aware that whatever haunted this space was awakening in full force. The woman screamed, pushing against the darkness, but it only wrapped more tightly around her, making her wails echo through the space. I stumbled back, fear coursing through me as the shadows began to swirl violently, threatening to swallow me too. No! I shouted, my voice straining against the chaos. I won't let this happen. Suddenly, I remembered the light that had surged within me before. I wouldn't let fear control me. You're not alone, I yelled into the darkness. I'll help you. With every ounce of courage, I focused on the warmth within, letting it grow until it burst forth. Bright light erupted from my hands, illuminating the corridor. The shadows screeched, their forms retreating from the light, swirling around like disturbed insects. The woman gasped, her form becoming clearer as I stood my ground. I felt a connection between us, and as she returned my gaze, I could see the pain melting away. Yes, that's it, she cried. You can do it. I took a step forward, battling through the swirling shadows. You will find peace, I shouted, pushing the light forward, forcing it into the depths of her sorrow. The shadows hissed and writhed as I poured my energy into her, driven by the hope to break the cycle of despair. With one final scream, the shadows released their hold, leaving only the light. The woman smiled, a mixture of relief and gratitude shining in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. You freed me. And just like that, she began to dissolve into the light, her figure brightening until she vanished completely. The room fell silent, and for the first time, I felt an overwhelming sense of calm wash over me. But soon, the silence was broken by whispers again, this time filled with rage. You think you can just take one of us? They echoed, their voices swirling back in anger, the shadows reforming and growing restless. I turned to face the corridor, knowing I had to be ready for whatever would come next. I'm not afraid of you, I shouted, confident that I could face the darkness again. As the shadows gathered like a storm, I knew I had to confront my own fears head-on. They danced around me, taunting me with images of failure and despair, trying to pull me back into their darkness. You're nothing without your fear, they hissed, their voices dripping with malice. You can't save anyone, not even yourself. But I pushed back, remembering the woman's sweet smile. That's not true, I shouted. I've faced one of you. I'll face the rest. With those words, I felt the warmth within me ignite again, filling me with hope and determination. I raised my hands, channeling that light toward the shadows. You will not control me. I choose my path. They recoiled, shrieking at the brightness as I pushed forward. The air crackled with energy, and I felt the power of the light surge within me, overcoming the dark that threatened to consume me. The shadows swirled angrily, their forms becoming chaotic and unstable. You are not worthy, they screamed, their voices echoing and bouncing like thunder through the narrow space. But I didn't stop. I pushed harder, fueled by the memory of the souls trapped in the darkness. As I advanced, fragments of light burst forth, illuminating the entire corridor in a blinding glow. The dark figures around me shrieked and writhed, their forms disintegrating in the brilliance. Everything felt alive. The very walls began to tremble with the intensity of the fight. Face your own darkness, they shrieked, pulling at my mind, trying to dig into my fears and doubts. Dark images flickered before my eyes, moments of failure, loneliness, shame. They were trying to distract me, but I gritted my teeth and held my focus. I will not let you break me, I yelled, refusing to be swayed by the darkness. Each step I took forward pushed the shadows further back, breaking their hold on the space. They twisted and screamed, but I wouldn't back down. I am stronger than my fears, I declared into the chaos, feeling the warmth of that light solidify within me. And then, with one final surge of energy, I let the light burst forth in a wild explosion, engulfing the entire corridor. A blinding flash filled the room as the shadows let out one last wail before completely vanishing into thin air. I breathed heavily, feeling an immense weight lift off my shoulders, a sense of triumph coursing through me. The chaos had calmed, and the room was flooded with soft, warm light. I stood in the center, realizing I had faced the depth of my fear and emerged stronger than before. But I knew my journey wasn't over yet. Other doors lined the hallway, each holding more stories, more souls, and I felt a responsibility to help them find peace. With renewed purpose, I turned to the next door, ready to see what awaited me beyond. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward once again, determined to confront whatever darkness lingered in the hearts of those still trapped, to bring them to the light. The whispers had faded, replaced by a soft hum of hope echoing through the air. I knew that as long as I was willing to face the shadows, I could help them all find their way home. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward once again, determined to confront whatever darkness lingered in the hearts of those still trapped, to bring them to the light. I walked to the next door, which looked worn and old, like it had not been opened in years. The wood was worn down, and the paint peeled like old skin. A chill settled around me as I reached for the doorknob, its cold metal sending a shiver through my arm. With a gentle push, the door creaked open, revealing a dark room that smelled of dust and decay. As my eyes adjusted, I noticed an antique-looking mirror hanging on the wall directly across from me. It had a cracked frame, ornate and beautifully carved, but the glass was cloudy, and I could barely see my reflection. I stepped inside, and the air felt heavy, thick with sadness. The moment I crossed the threshold, a soft whisper emerged from the shadows. "Help us." It was barely audible, but it wrapped around me with an icy grip. I felt compelled to move closer to the mirror. But as I did, I saw something shift within its depths. The glass distorted, swirling like a storm. I reached out entranced, my fingers brushing against its cold surface. Just as I touched it, the image inside the mirror shifted. It was not my reflection staring back at me. It was a child's face, pale and hollow, eyes wide with fear. "I'm trapped," he cried out, his voice painful, echoing throughout the room and sending chills up my spine. Without warning, the lights flickered above me, and the room's temperature dropped even more. I could see my breath hanging in the air, a thick mist that seemed to cling to me as dread pooled in my stomach. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fear rising within me. "I'm Danny," he whispered, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I've been here a long time. I can't find my way out." My heart ached for him. I could feel his despair wrapping around me like a blanket of ice. "What happened to you?" I pressed, hoping to understand why he was trapped. "I came here with my mother. She was looking for something, I don't know what, but she left me here. I can't find her. It feels like I'm stuck in time." His voice trembled, filled with a mixture of longing and fear. I took a step back, my mind racing. Danny was a lost soul who had been left behind, just like the others. "I'll help you find her," I promised, my resolve stronger than the icy grip of fear. "But you need to show me where she is." As soon as the words left my mouth, the mirror began to ripple violently, and the sad face of the child twisted in pain. "No," he cried out, clutching the edge of the frame. "It's not safe. She doesn't want to be found." The shadows in the room thickened, swirling around me like a dark cyclone. I felt the temperature plummet again, and the whispers returned, louder and more frantic. "Leave him! He's ours!" They screamed, their voices shrill with rage. I clutched my heart, feeling panic rise, but I refused to back down. "I won't let you take him," I shouted defiantly, feeling the light within me flicker and spark, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. With every ounce of determination, I rushed toward the mirror, focusing on the warmth building in my chest. "Danny, hold on!" I yelled, reaching through the swirling energy toward him. I felt the cold shock of the dark tendrils trying to pull me back, but I pushed harder, my body trembling with the effort. "Help me, please!" he cried again, fear etched across his young face. The mirror began to crack more, the glass splintering under the pressure of his cries and the shadow's hold. In that moment, I realized that Danny was not just trapped. He was tethered to something dark, something that kept him bound to this place. He needed to confront whatever lay in the shadows. I was determined to help him face it. "Danny, listen to me," I urged, my voice carrying the weight of my promise. "You have to be brave. Remember your mother. You need to fight the darkness. Focus on her love." The mirror trembled, and the room shook as the shadows writhed with fury. Silence. They roared, their anger bursting around us like a violent storm. I could feel the energy change. It was suffocating, thick with hatred and despair. Don't let them win, I encouraged him, my heart racing, desperate to reach him. I could see the flicker of hope in his eyes as he latched onto my words. Sweat dripped down my forehead as I drew on the light within me again, letting it shine brighter. In that moment, Danny's face transformed. My mother, he whispered, a spark igniting in his expression. Yes, focus on her. Call for her, I urged, feeling the energies clash around us. The shadows screamed, trying to engulf us, but a beam of light erupted from my hands, illuminating the room with a soft, golden glow. I saw Danny close his eyes, and for a fleeting second, I could see a vision of a woman in the darkness, a loving face, beautiful and kind. He called out, "Mom, I'm here." The shadows writhed again, their vicious whispers now morphing into angry shrieks. "You cannot call her. She belongs to us." But I would not be swayed. With every ounce of strength, I channeled the warmth coursing through me, focused on the love that Danny should feel, the bond he shared with his mother. Fight back, Danny. Don't let them control you. The light expanded, pushing the darkness back. All at once, the mirror began to crack wider, splintering like ice under pressure. I could see the child's fear transforming into resolve, the shadows dimming as he grasped the idea of hope. "Mom," he shouted, his voice stronger now. "Please come back." The moment he cried out, the air shifted. The shadows screeched as they began to dissolve, sliding away from the light like water pouring through fingers. A soft glow enveloped Danny, illuminating his small frame in pure radiance. Then, like magic, a bright light surged from the cracks in the mirror, pushing the darkness further back until only shadows remained. The edges of the room brightened, and suddenly, I was no longer alone. A figure materialized behind Danny, a woman with soft curls and gentle eyes. "Danny," she cried, reaching out with open arms. "I've been looking for you." Tears pooled in my eyes as I watched the mother and son embrace, their connection pulling the rest of the darkness away. The shadows hissed and writhed one final time, lost in the warmth of love that enveloped them. The mirror shimmered and then shattered completely, leaving the room void of dark figures. As light poured in, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over me. Danny turned to me, eyes wide with wonder. "You helped me? Thank you." He beamed, light spilling over him like a warm hug. "It wasn't just me," I replied, feeling the exhaustion settle into my bones. "You fought as well. You were brave." With that, the two figures began to fade, the mother and son both bursting with warmth and light, revealing the beauty of their bond. "Thank you for showing me the way," Danny said, his voice echoing softly. "I'll remember you." As they faded completely, I felt something shift in the room. The air was lighter, and the darkness that had been so suffocating now felt distant. But in that moment of peace, I remembered there were still other doors, each waiting for me, holding more stories. With a deep breath, I turned my attention to the next door. Each step I took felt stronger, more determined as I prepared to face whatever challenges awaited me. The reminders of triumph surrounded me, fueling my purpose to help others, to bring light into their darkness. So, I grasped the doorknob, a sense of urgency surging through me. I couldn't wait to see what lay beyond, ready to shine my light for the next lost soul in need. With a deep breath, I turned my attention to the next door. Each step I took felt stronger, more determined as I prepared to face whatever challenges awaited me. The pull of the next mystery was strong, making my heart race with both fear and excitement. I could feel the energy in the air, thick with tension and anticipation. As I grasped the doorknob, a shiver ran down my spine. The metal felt unnaturally cold against my skin. I hesitated for a moment, listening carefully. There was a low murmur coming from the other side, like the sound of many voices whispering in the dark. It sent a chill through me, making me second-guess my decision. I pushed the door open slowly, the hinges creaking ominously. A dim light flickered inside, revealing a large room filled with what looked like old furniture covered in white sheets. Dust floated through the air, shimmering oddly in the light. The whispers grew louder, echoing off the walls, wrapping around me like a cloak of dread. As I stepped inside, the door creaked shut behind me with a heavy thud, sealing me in. The whispers coalesced into a single voice, a harsh rasp that felt like nails scratching against wood. "You shouldn't have come here," it hissed. "You're not welcome." I spun around, my heart pounding. A large tapestry hung angrily on the far wall, depicting a scene of chaos, figures trapped in shadows, their faces twisted in fear. The image felt alive, drawing me in, making it hard to look away. I could almost see their mouths moving, silent cries for help. Panic surged within me, but I steeled myself. "I'm not afraid of you," I shouted, though I wasn't sure I believed it. I took a step further into the room, and the atmosphere shifted again. A cold breeze swept through, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and decay. The whispers harmonized into a low chant, a chorus of sorrow that pulled at my core. Then, from the corners of the room, shadowy figures began to form. They moved like smoke, twisting and curling, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. I felt a surge of fear, but something deeper pulled at me, a sense of duty to help them, to understand their pain. One of the figures drifted closer, its shape becoming more defined. It resembled a woman, her face gaunt and hollow, mouth drawn tight in an eternal scream. "Help us," she wailed, a sound that pierced through the air, swirling with anguish. "We are lost, so lost." "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling despite my resolve. "We are the forgotten," she replied, her tone heavy with sorrow. "We were once full of life, dreams, and love. But we are trapped here, caught between worlds." The shadows around her reacted to her pain, swirling faster, darkening the room even further. "You must leave. They don't want you here," another voice screamed, echoing like thunder. I felt it vibrating through my bones, a warning I couldn't ignore. "No," I replied firmly, finding clarity in the chaos. "I won't leave you like this. I will help you find peace." As I spoke those words, the shadows recoiled slightly, surprised by my defiance. The woman's face softened, and I saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. "You would help us?" she asked, voice shaking but full of yearning. "Yes," I affirmed, stepping closer, feeling a warmth building inside me, the light I had discovered in myself earlier. I could feel it expanding with each heartbeat. "I will do whatever it takes to restore your voices, to help you find comfort." Suddenly, the room shivered, and the shadows twisted in anger. "You think you can save them?" they screeched, their voices rising in fury. "You are nothing. Only shadows can remain." I felt a gust of wind whip around me, pushing me backward as the darkness threatened to pull me into its depths. I gripped the edges of a nearby table, steadying myself. Fear threatened to overwhelm me, but the determination kicked in. I could not allow their voices to fade. "Shadows cannot win," I shouted, holding onto the light inside me. I closed my eyes momentarily, focusing on Danny's face, hopeful, free. "You all deserve to be heard." The air grew electrified as I opened my eyes again, the glow that radiated from me cutting through the encroaching darkness. The shadows hissed and writhed, thrashing about in a desperate attempt to stay rooted. "No," they howled. "Leave now. This is our domain." Unfazed, I lifted my hands, feeling the power build within me. "You don't own this place," I cried out. "You are just remnants of pain and fear. I am here to heal." The shadowy figures shrieked, blurring in their form, as the light shot from my palms. It sparked and crackled as it arched through the air, a burst of warmth cutting through the cold. With every shout, I unleashed more light, illuminating the room in waves. I could feel the atmosphere shift, the shadows beginning to retreat. The widespread sorrow in the room felt heavy, but I pushed back against it, channeling all the courage I had. Suddenly, the woman's form brightened, becoming more solid, her face glowing with warmth. "Please help us remember," she pleaded. "We need to reclaim our stories." The shadows lunged toward her, their screams echoing, trying to drag her back into the darkness. "Stop! You mustn't listen to her," they yelled, their grip tightening around the remaining figures, but I wouldn't let them win. "Stay with me," I shouted, my voice steadier now. "Tell me your stories." I could feel the light radiating stronger, pushing against the dark tendrils wrapping around the others. One by one, I watched as the figures broke free from their binds, the warmth lighting up their expressions as they began to remember. Each shape around me flickered with energy, colors blooming in the shadows, their forms becoming less defined but more human, filled with life. They began to tell their stories, each voice a brave echo in the chorus of light and love. "I was a poet," one man said, his voice strong despite the tremble in it. "I wrote of love, of loss. Now my words are blown away by the wind." "I was a mother," a woman chimed in, tears of regret shining in her eyes. "I lost my child, and I couldn't bear it. I thought if I stayed here, I could find her." Their voices intertwined, creating a tapestry of emotions that wove around the room. The shadows hissed louder, unable to withstand the power of belonging beginning to shimmer. "We were wronged, forgotten, betrayed," came a voice from the back, a deep growl that reverberated with anger. "We cannot reclaim what was taken." I spun around to face it, the largest of the forms standing defiantly against the light. Its eyes burned like embers, filled with rage. "Leave! You cannot save them." Was this the source of their pain? "You thrive on their suffering," I shouted, feeling every ounce of bravery I possessed. "You must let go of your hatred." The shadows entwined, thickening around it, and I saw them tremble under my words. "The light will break you. You will not win," it screamed, but doubt was creeping into its voice. "Your stories matter," I insisted, feeling the warmth pressing outward. I envisioned their voices ringing free, no longer shackled by fear or anger. "You deserve to be heard." With a final surge of light, I pushed it forward with everything I had left. The dark shadow shrieked as the brilliance erupted, swallowing it whole, unraveling centuries of pain held tight within its grasp. The remaining figures gasped, their faces and bodies glowing, releasing their chains from the dark. The ghastly atmosphere lightened, shadows beginning to fade into mere whispers. As clarity returned, I watched the darkness dissolve, the powerful forces they once feared becoming small wisps of smoke. The warmth surged my heart, and with it, life re-entered the room. They gathered around me, their hearts beating anew, fascinating energy radiating from them. "Thank you," the woman said, her eyes now shining with tears of joy. "You did this." "No, we did this together," I replied, a sense of pride swelling in my chest. Their laughter echoed softly, a healing sound that filled the once tormented room with energy. But as the last remnants of shadows disappeared, a new chill filled the space. I could sense it immediately, a presence lurking just out of sight. The air thickened again, like the beginning of a storm, and an unsettling feeling crept up my spine. The walls seemed to close in slightly, and I could hear the faintest sound of chains rattling in the distance. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice trembling with unease. The figures exchanged nervous glances, their joy quickly turning to fear. "There's more," the man who was once a poet said, his voice trembling. "We thought we were free, but something darker follows." I felt dread settle into my stomach like ice. "What do you mean? What else is here?" A low growl echoed from the corners of the room, sending a tremor through the floor. The shadows shifted slightly, collecting in a corner as if preparing to form something grotesque. "Stay close," the mother warned, her voice barely a whisper, yet firm. "It feeds on fear. As long as we stand together, we can fight back." That was when I realized I wasn't just helping them anymore. I was part of this. Whatever darkness was coming, I was ready to face it alongside them. The room started to shake, dust spiraling into the air as the growling grew louder. "It's here," one of the lost souls shouted in panic. "Focus. We have to stay strong," I yelled, stepping forward, determined to face this new terror. The shadows thickened, pressing against the edges of my vision, and I could feel the air shift. Suddenly, a figure broke through, massive and shadowy, with eyes like cold stars piercing through the gloom. I gasped. The creature towered above us, an embodiment of rage and despair. "You think you can save them?" "They belong to me," it bellowed, its voice crashing like thunder, shaking the walls. I felt the power of the light waver as the darkness pushed forward. The struggle had only just begun. "Stay together," I shouted, feeling the warmth of the figures spread throughout the room. They formed a circle, placing their hands together, ready to fight against this overwhelming force. My heart raced as I gathered every ounce of courage, channeling the light once more, prepared to battle this force that had haunted me. "Your time ends here," I shouted, feeling the unity surrounding me. "We will break your hold." As the creature lunged forward, darkness melding into the very air, I raised my hands, feeling the warmth surge within me. The shadows twisted and coiled around it, pulling it closer and closer to the center of the room, as if waiting for a signal to attack. Each heart seemed to pound in unison, and I could sense the fear drifting through the air like cigarette smoke, clinging to my skin. "We can do this together," I called, trying to keep my voice steady, to cloak my own rising terror in bravado. The aura around me trembled as the creature snarled. Its form flickered, revealing sharp teeth and glinting eyes, hungry for despair. "You think you can save them?" "You're a fool," it howled, the sound echoing like a thunderclap, vibrating through my bones. I realized then that the very shadows were drawing strength from our fear, growing bolder with each second of hesitation. "We won't back down," I shouted, trying to believe the words, even as a chill crawled up my spine. The light from my palms began to flicker as the dark entity drew closer, and I felt a wave of nausea washing over me. It was unique, a feeling I hadn't encountered before, a mixture of dread and hopelessness, as if the very fabric of the air was slipping away. "Focus," I chided myself, recalling Danny's grateful face, the light of hope that had been ignited earlier. The warmth was my anchor, and I closed my eyes for a brief moment, searching for strength within. When I opened them, the creature was at the edge of our circle, its presence so overwhelming that I struggled to breathe. "You will become part of my darkness," it screeched, the sound causing the walls to shudder, dust cascading from the ceiling like falling stars. With a deep breath, I visualized a barrier of light surrounding my companions. "Together, draw on our memories," I yelled, as the energy around us began to pulse with a fierce rhythm. Slowly, the others joined in, their hands illuminating the space, warmth spreading outward. I watched as their faces transformed from fear to determination, growing stronger as we formed this incredible bond against the darkness. But the shadows weren't finished. The creature let out a low growl, and suddenly, dark tendrils lashed out in all directions, slicing through the air with the speed of knives. One grabbed my ankle, its icy grip sending shocks up my body, wrenching me closer to the ground. Struggling against the binds, I gritted my teeth. The cold was horrible, wrapping around my limbs as I pulled with everything I had. "No, you won't take me," I yelled, yanking my foot free just as another tendril tried to snare me. But the creature was relentless, shooting forward like a thunderstorm. A pair of hands gripped mine, urging me up. "You're not alone," the poet said, his voice bursting through the haze. As I regained my footing, I spun back around and faced the entity, prepping myself for battle. "Look at the light we have," I exclaimed, raising my hands again. "You can't take this away from us." With a surge of strength, the light grew brighter, illuminating the corners of the room as if awakening it from a long slumber. It crackled with energy, sending beams shooting out, piercing the shadows that clung stubbornly to the walls. "Leave them be," I screamed, determined to combat this creature's torment with every fiber of my being. A soft hum resonated in the air, vibrating against my heart, as if the room was echoing our fight. But it came back, coiling in the air, unyielding. "You are foolish. You think love can defeat me," it roared, the force of its voice causing my heart to stutter in my chest. Love, hope, it was power. I could feel it coursing through me. Quickly, I grasped their hands tighter. "Breathe. Remember your lives, your joys. Feel the love that connects us all." The bond between us shivered, warmth flooding through our joined hands. I could see flickers of memories sparkling in the air, vibrant and alive. The smiles, the laughter, the moments that brought them joy. With renewed strength, we pushed against the darkness together. "We're not afraid," I declared, watching as the light began to consume the dark tendrils, one by one, erasing them with fierce brilliance. The creature roared in rage, its form fluttering wildly as the light enveloped it. "You cannot resist forever. I will return," it screeched, but I could sense its power waning as the warmth spread across the room like a rising tide. As the last of the shadows vanished with a final gasp, I felt it, a shift in the room, the darkness receding completely. The oppressive weight that had held us captive began to lift, revealing the beauty of the space once again, now tinged with a sense of peace and warmth. Breathless, we collapsed to the ground, eyes wide in disbelief. "Is it over?" one of the souls whispered, uncertainty lingering in the air. I looked around at my new friends, feeling a flicker of hope. "I think we did it," I said, my voice wavering. But I paused, dread creeping back in. What if it comes back? Their expressions mirrored the fear I felt. Shadows of uncertainty lingering just beneath the surface. The air felt charged again, heavy and tense, as though something was waiting, lurking just out of sight. "It shouldn't be able to return," the mother murmured, peering around nervously. "But it may not be the only darkness here." An eerie silence fell over us, the words hanging in the air like a damp cloud. I strained to listen, but all that could be heard was my heart pounding in my ears. Each passing second felt like an eternity, thick with the anticipation of something coming. Suddenly, a distant sound pierced through the stillness. It was soft at first, but it grew louder, a creaking, reminiscent of wooden floors being pressed under heavy footsteps. I glanced at the others, their eyes wide with alarm. "Did you hear that?" someone asked, panic creeping into their tone. "Yes," I whispered, my heart racing again. "We're not alone." Panic surged anew, and I forced myself to breathe deeply. "Stay together. We've faced darkness before." The words felt weak even as I said them, overshadowed by the fear creeping in. As the creaking grew louder, the walls around us began to shake. Dust cascaded from above, sprinkling like rain. "It's coming closer," I gasped, adrenaline flooding my veins once more. The whispers returned, but this time they weren't saying my name. They chanted something darker, a convergence of despair. "Join us! Join us!" I clutched the hands of those around me, our strength intermingling. "We need to confront this," I urged, my voice shaky but defiant. But the air grew thicker, as if the shadows themselves were alive, constricting the space, warping our surroundings. I felt a change, an unnatural chill skating over my skin. And then, out of the shadows, a figure began to materialize, shrouded in darkness, moving like water. It was slender, but moved with a purpose, gliding toward us with a disturbing grace that made my stomach drop. "No," I whispered, the chill pricking at every nerve. "Not again." With every ounce of courage I clung to, I faced a new horror closing in. This was more unsettling than the last, an unnatural elegance that echoed danger and ancient malice. The figure let out a low, melodic laugh that curdled the air, almost sweet but horrifyingly wrong. "You thought you were free?" It taunted, its voice impossibly smooth, dripping with mockery. "We won't go back," I shot back, my resolve hardening. dimly aware of how small my voice sounded against the chaos. The entity cocked its head, a gesture that sent shivers coursing through me, as if it were considering my resistance. "You don't understand," it replied, its tone crooning in a way that made my skin crawl. "Freedom is an illusion. You are all mine." As it stepped closer, vivid colors danced around it, blending and breaking apart, feeding into its dark presence. The walls seemed to darken, absorbing light, drowning our hope. I felt the memories of joy I had conjured earlier flutter and fade, replaced by the weight of despair, but I refused to back down. "We have each other," I shouted, my voice rising above the growing panic. "And we will fight." The others stirred behind me, rallying at my words. Their determination began to spark once more, intertwining with mine, forming a fragile but fierce light. But the entity advanced, laughing softly, its ominous gaze piercing like daggers through the dark. "Such comfort, but your bonds do not scare me," it whispered. "They will break." I felt the shadows creeping around us, threatening to engulf our light. "Not if we believe," I yelled, summoning every piece of energy left in me. "Bring your darkness. We will not surrender." And as my heart pounded with a rhythm strong with resolve, I willed the light back, stronger than before, but I could feel it slipping away once more. It was as if the very air was trying to choke us, each breath harder, each word a struggle. The figure approached, growing more solid, the malicious grin spreading across its face. "You think this is a battle? Sweetheart, this is just the beginning." A sudden flurry of despair filled the room, swirling like a tempest, and for a moment, I felt myself falter, the light dimming against the force of its presence. But I wasn't ready to give in. As I stood, trembling yet resolute, the whispers grew louder, an echo of forgotten souls yearning for release. "Help us," they cried in unison, swelling around me like a chorus. I realized they weren't shadows anymore. They were voices, the lost souls that had fought alongside me, and they were reaching out, guiding me to the strength I needed. With the energy from their voices, a spark ignited within me once more. I focused on each of their stories, their pain and triumph renewing my own strength, weaving their profound desire for freedom into a brilliant tapestry that surged through the air. "Together," I shouted, channeling their voices, merging them with mine. We couldn't let this darkness consume us. The new entity faltered, confusion flickering in its eyes. "What are you doing?" it questioned, voice cracking slightly as it stumbled back, hesitant against the rising tide of light. We pushed forward, pouring our hearts, our wills into the air, feeling sunlight breaking through the ominous clouds above, filling the room with warmth and hope. The entity shrieked, its form shifting wildly as the radiant light pressed against it with unrelenting force. "No, this cannot be," it screamed, its voice bending into despair. As the shadows began to peel away, revealing the true shapes behind them, I felt a surge of exhilaration wash over me. "This is who we are. We are not lost." I could see the figures behind me bursting forth, their laughter and tears blending into the light, creating a powerful beacon of defensive energy. We would fight together. As the light surged, the entity shrieked again, a sound so shrill that it clawed at my ears. I felt the energy building around us, pulsating with the memories of lost souls, and I dug my feet into the ground, anchoring myself against the howling winds of despair swirling around. "Let it go!" I screamed, my heart pounding fiercely, the rhythm matching the rising energy surrounding us. The light that gathered was blinding now, casting away the shadows while pushing the creature back with unyielding force. Suddenly, the floor beneath us trembled. It felt like some ancient creature awakening. The walls seemed alive, shifting and contracting like a living being, and I could feel the ground groaning with the weight of the darkness clinging to it. "Stay together," I urged, my voice strained but fierce. The others clutched tighter, their faces glowing with determination, but I could see flickering doubt in their eyes. "It's too strong," Someone shouted, glancing nervously at the entity, which had taken on an even darker shade, as if absorbing all the terror around it. It twisted and contorted, stretching its limbs unnaturally, turning into a grotesque silhouette that seemed to haunt the edges of the light. The very air grew heavy with fear, suffocating. I felt the shadow curling around my legs, tugging at my strength. It whispered to me, brushing against my ear with chilling intimacy. "You cannot win. You are only temporary." I shuddered at the sensation, forcing my mind back to the warmth of light and hope. But the coldness seeped deeper, dispersing itself through my body, aiming to extinguish my will. I closed my eyes and pictured all the joy we had fought for, the love we had nurtured. Then I felt a sudden shift in power, a charge that feathered against my skin, sending a shiver of warning through my spine. I opened my eyes and saw the entity hovering before us, growing larger, its eyes like dark pools threatening to swallow everything in their path. "Foolish child," it snarled, its voice a poisonous hiss. "You think you can end me? Your light is a fleeting fantasy." Suddenly, it lunged, tendrils shooting out like arrows meant to pierce through my thoughts. I ducked instinctively, feeling the air shift as they whirled around, grazing my skin like icy blades. Desperation clawed at me. "Push harder," I screamed at my companions, feeling their collective while fueling my own, igniting a sense of purpose. "Don't let it in. Fight back." In that moment, the shadows darted, coiling around the figures standing nearest to me, a deadly dance that trapped them in a cruel embrace. I saw the look of horror etched on their faces as tendrils slashed through the light, dimming it ever so slightly, removing bits of us like pieces of a puzzle. "Help!" one of them shouted, struggling against the dark weight. Panic filled me as I reached out, desperate, trying to grasp their hands, pulling them back into the light. I could feel panic rising like bile in my throat. "We can hold it," I urged, but doubts crept into my mind. The abyss of shadow loomed, pulling and stretching, threatening to engulf our collective force. I was losing them, one by one, with every blink, the warmth dimming further. "Stay with me, please." The creature fed off our fear, animating in a grotesque mockery of human form. It laughed softly, a sound that felt almost intimate in its cruelty. "You think you can save them? Your hope is merely a flicker in a storm." Suddenly, the temperature dropped. I could see my breath floating before me, crystallizing like shards of glass. A terrifying chill slithered through the room, wrapping around my heart with a tightening grip, squeezing my resolve. Visions danced on the edge of my consciousness, dark images of despair and destruction flashing like a strobe light. I saw shadows swallow laughter, erase smiles. I felt panic tighten around my throat. The darkness wanted to feed here, to twist and drown us in sorrow before extinguishing the last remnants of light. "No!" I shouted, pushing against the void that was creeping closer, the icy fingers clawing at my soul. "We are stronger than this. We will not be consumed." I could feel the skin on my arms prickling as darkness began pulling, gnawing at me, wrapping around my waist. I fought with every ounce of my being, but it was like trying to wrestle with fog, a slippery, elusive beast that knew every trick. The walls shuddered again, creaking ominously like a ship about to capsize. Strange groans echoed throughout the space, blending with the entity's sinister laughter, which had turned into a chorus of disembodied voices, each one whispering, coaxing surrender. "Join us! Give in!" Panic surged through my veins, coursing like electric currents mixed with ice. I felt a hard longing creep into my heart, a desire to succumb because fighting hurt. "No," I breathed, trying not to let the creeping despair anchor me to the ground. Then out of the corner of my eye, I saw flickers of light, remnants of souls fighting along with me. I wasn't alone. I grasped their hands tighter, focusing on the love that had brought us here, pushing as one against the shadows that threatened to sever our bond. The entity grew frustrated, twisting faster, a whirlwind of darkness caught in a storm of rage. "You think this will save you?" It bellowed, but I could sense its voice wavering, and I knew it was losing its grip. "Fight, everyone!" I shouted, igniting the room with our collective light, stronger now than it had ever been. I could feel hope intertwining with my resolve, sending bolts of energy rushing through my limbs. My heart beat faster, pounding against the suffocating darkness, pushing through. But just as we were ready to strike, a deafening sound echoed through the space, like thunder crashing in a silent sky. The floor shook violently as if protesting the energy gathering, causing a ripple of uncertainty to wash over us. "What's happening?" one of my companions cried, eyes wide. I felt the shadows clawing at us, warping the light just as the ground erupted, sending us tumbling to the floor. With a loud crack, one of the walls split open, revealing a tunnel veiled in thick shadow. A cacophony of whispers surged forth, swirling around me like a tempest. It felt alive, breathing, hungry. A chill washed over as tendrils snaked toward the opening, searching for the source of warmth, of life. "This can't be good," I murmured, fear surging through me as the walls groaned like ancient lumber, warning of the impending doom lurking in the shadows. "Should we go in?" someone dared to ask, their voice trembling. A heavy silence followed, the flickering light forced into a standoff with the encroaching shadows. "No, we have each other," I insisted, eyes flicking back to the shadowy figure. "We can face this." But uncertainty gnawed at my confidence, and I felt the ground quake again, shaking me to my core. The creature's laughter echoed, a hideous cackle that echoed through the room, mocking our hesitation. "You will wander aimlessly, trapped in this endless nightmare." I steeled my resolve, glancing at my companions, their faces revealing reflected fears and doubt. "If we face it together, we can endure. That's our only chance." My voice rang through, sparking a flicker of hope among the darkness, like a single candle flickering in a vast sea of night. But before I could move, shadows poured in from the opening in the wall, flooding the space. They didn't just slither, they rolled in waves, consuming everything in their path. "Get back!" I shouted frantically, my instincts screaming at me to protect the light. But they were too quick, and I felt them brushing against my skin, cold and suffocating, pulling me backward. "Help!" I cried out, pressing against the energy that swirled around me, clutching the hands of my companions, desperately trying to anchor us together as the darkness tangled around our limbs. It was creeping further, wrapping around my throat, squeezing tighter. I couldn't breathe. "Fight it!" I gasped, my heart racing as I fought against the icy grip, desperate to keep hope alive. Each whisper of despair pulled harder. I could feel the shadows clawing deep, trying to pull me under, trying to smother the light that fought so hard to break free. But I would not let it consume me. I could feel the warmth of my friends against me. "Together!" I called, a fire igniting inside me, sending waves of power coursing through my body. "Together we are stronger." The room roared as our combined energy surged forward, illuminating every corner, driving back the claws of darkness. Shadows shrieked, the fog of despair thinning, as our united strength pushed against the unrelenting tide. Just as I thought we could stand victorious, a blast of cold air surged forth, snaking through the cracks of the room, pushing deeper into our hearts, causing a momentary doubt that threatened to engulf all we had built. "Do not falter," I urged, fighting against my own rising fear. "We fight with love, with hope. Remember why we're here." But then, the shadows paused, seeming to contemplate for the first time. A low growl emanated from the center, its malevolence boiling over, turning the atmosphere electric. "Do you think love can hold me?" it hissed, the vast glow of our light flickering momentarily at its taunting words. "You will pay for this insolence." My heart raced as the air grew heavy again, thickening with every moment. I struggled to breathe, a sound that caught in my throat as the shadows surged forward, clawing across every inch of us like a tide trying to wash away what little hope remained. I could see the loss etching across the faces of my companions, And in that moment, despair clawed deeper, urging me, twisting my thoughts into tangled knots of fear. What if this was all for nothing? I thought, momentarily losing sight of the glowing tapestry we had woven. Yet then, I remembered their stories, their struggles, their light that had shined brightly through life's trials. I allowed that memory to curl around my heart, igniting a spark of fierce determination. No, we won't fade, I yelled, lifting my voice into a battle cry, ready to push against the shadows enveloping us. The walls began to shift again as the creature rushed forward, dark tendrils scraping the air like nails on glass, aiming straight for me. I raised my hands, feeling the light gathering once more. But this time, I felt the ground quake, not just from my fear, but from the power of everyone around me. The others joined hands, the warmth blooming outward, filling the cracks left by despair, creating a meld of courage radiating through our circles. "Let's push together," someone shouted, and suddenly, their cries reverberated in my chest, echoing through the air. With one final push, we thrust our healing light forward, casting back the shadows that threatened to engulf everything. I could see the entity reel back, its dark form shimmering like a film of oil, caught between two worlds. "Stop! You cannot!" It screamed, rage spilling out like a storm as our light enveloped it. "No!" I shouted back, drawing strength from every soul standing beside me. "We are not only fighting for ourselves, we fight for you too. Feel the power of this moment." The warmth surged bright, crashing against the darkness, shattering the very essence of despair that tried to consume us, sending shockwaves through the room. I felt the weight of the entity faltering, losing its shape in a tempest of emotions that flickered around us. And yet, deep down, I understood there was more to come. The shadows flickered like a flame, about to be extinguished but just couldn't let go. I could taste the anxiety in the air, an unshakable feeling that this wasn't over. But as the last slivers of darkness began to crumble, fragments of light sparked in the depths, erupting like stars across the void space, sending ripples of hope rushing through me. "Stay strong," I yelled, pushing forward one last time. As the warmth enveloped us, the boundaries of fear slowly crumbling, replaced by the strength of unity. In that moment, as we held on tightly, I could feel it, the thread of darkness beginning to fray. Hope rose like a tide. The shadows quivered, trembling against the onslaught of our combined light. Yet the last flicker of despair was not done with us. Before I could celebrate, a final pulse of coldness washed over, as if the shadows had one last trick to play. The walls of the room began to shift once more. The walls of the room began to shift once more, their surfaces rippling like disturbed water. It was as if they were alive, breathing, and watching us with unseen eyes. The air turned heavy, like a weight pressing down on my chest, squeezing the light out of the space we desperately struggled to hold on to. "Stay close," I yelled, urgency breaking through the tension. The shadows writhed, and I felt them stretch, reaching for us with dark fingers that threatened to snatch us back into their cold embrace. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the room. One of the walls buckled under the pressure, splintering apart and revealing a gaping void behind it. My heart sank as I realized it wasn't just darkness, but something else, an abyss filled with swirling whispers, haunting echoes of sadness and despair. "What is that?" Someone gasped behind me, their breath hitching in fear. I couldn't answer. My eyes were glued to the darkness, something so deep and unfathomable that it sent chills racing down my spine. "Whatever it is, we can't let it in," I shouted, trying to rally my companions. But as I spoke, the shadows seemed to laugh, a cruel sound that echoed off the walls, mocking our determination. "Join us," the entity hissed, its voice layered with thousands of whispers. I could almost see the shadows dripping from the walls, pooling on the ground, merging into a thick mass that rippled and surged like angry water. They darted forward, tendrils twisting, reaching for us with a hunger that terrified me. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to concentrate on the warmth of my friends around me, feeling their presence like a small flame. But the air felt heavy, suffocating as darkness engulfed the light. With one glance, I could see the fear etched across their faces, the uncertainty gnawing at our resolve. "Fight back!" I screamed, but my voice felt lost in the rising tide. The shadows responded with a frenzy, roaring as the walls began to crack more, pieces breaking away like old bones, revealing the darkness flowing just behind the surface. The shadows were winning. I could feel the icy grip of despair wrapping tighter around my chest, squeezing so hard that it felt like my heart might burst. The whispers grew louder, overlapping into a cacophony of torment, spiraling through the air like smoke. "You'll be ours soon." It felt like time stood still, caught in the grip of dread. I wanted to turn and run, but where would I go? The ground beneath us trembled, vibrating like the pulse of something ancient, something malevolent buried deep within the darkness. Panic surged through me, a wild animal clawing against the bars of its cage. I couldn't allow fear to take over. "We are stronger than this," I shouted again, the desperation rising in my voice. "We can do this together." But my words felt weak against the shadows, which slithered closer, almost as if they were tasting my fear. The darkness throbbed as it erupted with chaotic energy, tendrils darting in every direction, some reaching for my friends, others curling around me like snakes ready to strike. As the shadows surged, I swayed back, limbs feeling heavy, almost unable to keep standing. I glanced around, seeking any semblance of light, the glow we had captured just moments earlier. But what I found instead were faces pale with terror, eyes wide, not just with fear, but also with hopelessness. "No!" I gasped, feeling a pang of panic. "Don't give in. Hold on to the light." Suddenly, one of my companions cried out as a dark tendril snaked around their foot, dragging them back towards the void. "Help me," they pleaded, terror lining their voice, echoing the same fears I struggled against. Before I could react, the shadows surged like a wave, crashing over us. Time seemed to warp as I felt the pull of the darkness, trying to snatch us into the endless abyss. The laughter grew, rising to a deafening shriek, drowning out our cries, filling the air with a choking miasma of despair. In a moment of sheer instinct, I lunged forward, gripping the nearest hand tight. "You won't take them," I shouted, channeling every ounce of my will into the comfort of human connection. "We will fight, together." But as I looked around, the shadows were relentless, pulling us toward the gaping maw behind the walls, like a predator savoring its prey. I could feel the icy fingers slithering up my legs, crawling towards my heart as I fought with everything I had. I heard the distant echoes of their cries, swallowed by the darkness. "We can't let this happen," I screamed, but my voice felt small against the overwhelming weight. It was as if the shadows could taste our fear, becoming stronger with every heartbeat that raced in my chest. The sound of bones cracking echoed around me, as if the walls themselves were in agony. I stumbled backward, my pulse racing, eyes darting around for something, anything, that could give me hope. Then I remembered the light, our light. It flickered in the back of my mind, a candle flame in the storm of despair. "Focus," I shouted, pulling my friends closer, trying to chain our energies together. "We need to believe in each other." With frantic determination, I reached deep inside, pulling threads of warmth, memories of laughter, love, and unity. I could feel the light glowing again, flickering like an ember in the wind, gathering strength as I channeled everything I had into it. "Remember what we're fighting for," I declared, a fire igniting in my soul. "We are not alone." In that moment, I felt a surge, a pulse that resonated through the air, awakening something deep inside, something primal that flew against the suffocating despair. I could see my friends starting to glow, each of us lighting up in response to the call of hope, just as the shadows began to wail and protest. But the creature was not done. Gripped with rage, it launched itself towards me with brutal speed, a furious mass of darkness that seemed to have a mind of its own. Foolish mortals, it screeched, the walls trembling under the weight of its fury. You cannot escape your fate. The darkness coiled around us, like a massive serpent ready to crush everything we clung to. The air itself felt electric and hostile, as if the very atmosphere was pushing back against our fragile light. I could hear the whispers growing frantic, as if they were urging the shadows to close in and consume us whole. I steeled myself, refusing to give in. "We will not fall," I shouted. "We are more than you will ever understand." Around me, I felt warmth igniting anew, a bond that pulled us closer together. Sparks of light flared in the air, lighting up the gathering darkness, driving the shadows back, bit by bit. But even as the light expanded, I felt one last wave of fear wash over me, a chill creeping down my spine as the shadows fought back. They surged, pressing against us, clawing, tugging, desperate to pull us into their depths. In that moment of struggle, I could feel my heart racing, beating violently against the encroaching fear. I knew we had to push, had to dig deep, for we were on the brink of something terrifying, an unseen chasm threatening to swallow us into infinite darkness. But suddenly, a piercing cry cut through the chaos, clear and sharp. "No!" Someone shouted from behind. The words were like lightning, sparking through the darkness and grounding us momentarily. "We can't let it take our hope." They were rallying, the fear in their voice turning to strength, filling the space with vibrant energy. With one last surge of effort, we channeled everything into a massive wave of light, pushing against the cold, unyielding darkness that sought to extinguish us. "For each other, for hope!" I yelled into the storm, urging everyone to join in, letting our determination reignite like wildfire. The room erupted with energy as our light surged forward, pushing against the suffocating darkness that surrounded us. I felt the shadows recoil, shrieking in fear as we fought back with every ounce of our strength. But the more we pressed forward, the stronger the darkness fought back, as if it could sense our bond tightening, becoming a true force to reckon with. Its fierce grip tore through the air, ripping apart the very foundation on which we stood. "Hold on!" I yelled, the adrenaline racing through my veins. One last push, it had to be enough. The shadows screamed, a collective wail resonating through the energy that built up between us, like a storm poised to strike. "Together!" I shouted once more, and the light surged, casting the shadows back further, illuminating the dark recesses that lingered in the edges of the room. Just as I thought we could overpower it, a blinding flash erupted from the shadows, a strobe of darkness, as if the night had transformed into pure chaos. The air crackled, and for a fleeting moment, I thought everything was tearing apart. But with that blinding flash came a clarity, an understanding of the true battle we were waging. I wasn't just fighting against the shadows, but against the shadows within ourselves, each of us grappling with our fears, our pain, and our doubts. As the chaotic energy surrounded me, I vowed not to let despair reign. I had to believe in the light, in the hope we had built, defending it with every breath in my body. And just as the shadows lunged one last time, I felt a fierce connection with everyone around me. The warmth doubled, pulsing through my body, empowering me. "Let's finish this," I yelled, my voice echoing through the storm, leading us into one final assault against the darkness that threatened to consume us. In that moment, we all pushed forward, merging our light into one brilliant beam, a spear aimed straight for the heart of the swirling shadows. The heart of the swirling shadows. The world around me pulsed, everything slowing as our combined energy surged forward like a tidal wave, crashing into the dark occupant of the room. The very air felt electric, vibrating with the power of our will. The shadows writhed, hissing, and shrieking as our light hit them, illuminating every corner that had once been lost to darkness. I could see the faces of my friends, illuminated in the glow. Their expressions were fierce and determined, and for a moment, hope sparked brightly. Yet, even as we pushed against the darkness, I felt an unsettling chill creeping into my bones. It wasn't just fear, but something deeper, a foreboding feeling that the battle was far from over. The shadows screamed louder, their voices merging into a single haunting noise that felt alive. It clawed at the edges of my sanity, a palpable force trying to invade my mind. Suddenly, the shadows surged back, angry tendrils curling toward us like a monstrous wave, desperate to snuff out our light. I stumbled back, feeling the cold grip of despair reaching for my ankles, yanking me toward the abyss that had opened up behind the shattered wall. "Don't let it take you," I yelled, voice cracking with fear as I struggled against the pull, my heart racing. I saw others being dragged down. The fear in their eyes mirrored my own. The darkness had teeth, sharp and glistening, hungry for the warmth that we represented. Just as I thought we were losing ground, I felt something shift within me, an inner fire igniting. "Fight!" I screamed, pushing back as hard as I could. I focused on the warmth of my friends, the love that kept us bound together, fueling my resolve. Together, don't look back. But the shadows were relentless. They swelled, muting our light, wrapping us in an icy cocoon, pulling us apart. The chilling whispers crept into my mind, sowing seeds of doubt. I entertained thoughts of failure, of defeat as the darkness wrapped tighter around me, squeezing with a cruel strength. Their hissing voices echoed terrifying proclamations of despair. "Your hope is futile. Strength will not save you. Join us and end your suffering." I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, fighting against the dread that threatened to consume me. Suddenly, I caught a glimpse of a face in the darkness, one I recognized. It was a twisted reflection of myself, its mouth twisted into a cruel grin drenched in shadows, eyes glowing an unsettling red. I gasped, taking a step back as goosebumps crawled across my skin. "No," I whispered, horrified at the sight, feeling a dark truth ripple through me. I could become that. My worst fears played out before me, the embodiment of everything I had ever dreaded. "Embrace it," the whisper echoed, curling around my mind like smoke. "Let go and feel the release." "Get out of my head," I screamed, pushing against the darkness that threatened to overtake my consciousness. I focused harder, drawing all of the light I could summon, wrapping it around me like armor. I felt the pull of my friends, their hands gripping mine, reality grounding me as we formed a chain, refusing to go down. "We need to stand together," I shouted, desperation surging through me as we were swarmed with cold, shadowy limbs. But no matter how bright our combined light glimmered, it was as if the shadows had a mind of their own. They danced around us, shifting, circling, whispering, constantly finding gaps, slipping through the cracks in our defenses. The walls contorted grotesquely, grotesque faces emerging and disappearing, twisting in agony as they faded back into the darkness. I felt their pain resonating across every inch of me, raw despair whispering temptingly in my ear, trying to sway me toward surrender. Thoughts of giving up tugged at my heart, giving rise to doubt that clawed relentlessly at the edges of my resolve. "Stay strong," I yelled desperately, grasping my friends tightly. "We have to believe." With every ounce of my being, I imagined the light growing, pushing against the grim facade that closed in around us. I could see them, twisted figures looming just beyond the edge of our radiance. Their forms flickered, changing, seeming almost familiar. Faces of people I once knew distorted into grotesque mockeries of their former selves. They clawed towards us, trapped yet seeking to drag us away, their eyes hollow and pleading, mouths gaping wide. "Help us," they cried, voices warping into horrible wails. "No," I gasped, tears stinging my eyes. "You're not real." I wanted to scream back, but their calls seemed to pull at something deep within me, a craving for connection shattered by the sight that hung before me. Each of their pleas echoed with memories that twisted like daggers within my heart. The shadows closed tighter, the cold press growing agonizing. sapping the warmth from my limbs. Just as I thought all hope was lost, a flash of energy surged through me again, igniting a spark I didn't know still existed. I had to resist, had to push. With a roar that erupted from the depths of my chest, I focused on that light, letting it swirl around me, fiercely resisting the shadows. But the darkness retaliated with brutal force, slamming into us with the weight of 1,000 storms. A tremendous pulse of energy shot through the air, and the room began to tremble, threatening to collapse. I could feel the ground quaking beneath my feet, the threshold of reality tipping dangerously toward the depths of despair. Panic surged in my chest as the shadows morphed into a howling storm, a mass of darkness that seemed almost sentient, lashing out, trying to break our circle. With every breath, I could feel myself being pulled by despair. But we had to hold on. We had to fight back against the grip of hopelessness that sought to consume us. As one, we pressed against the shadows, pouring our fears into the light that pushed forward, aiming for a breakthrough, a way out of this nightmare. I glanced at my friends around me, determination etched onto their faces. "We can do this!" I yelled once more, forcing the words through trembling lips, rallying our spirit amidst the chaos. Yet the shadows were not done. I felt icy tendrils slip past our defenses, piercing towards my mind, slippery whispers creeping, trying to drown out our unity. "You are nothing," they hissed. "You cannot escape." Noise surged, voices piling upon each other like a cacophony of screams, drowning out the glimmers of hope we desperately clung to. My heart raced, and I felt my resolve weakening as fear crept in through the cracks. Everything seemed ready to shatter, darkness clawing hungrily at our souls, an endless abyss threatening to swallow us whole. "No!" I shouted, the word rising from deep within me, fiercer than before. "This ends now." I drew together every scrap of strength and hope I could muster, directing it at the advancing shadows with all my might, refusing to surrender, refusing to become what they wanted me to be. The shadows writhed, screeching in a symphony of rage, and I could feel their response surging against the walls of our light. Just as I thought we were gaining momentum, a new wave of shadows crashed towards us, pulling everything back into an endless nightmare. The ground felt unsteady, shifting beneath my feet, like sinking sand determined to pull me under. Dark figures twisted, morphing and changing shapes, forming grotesque images that froze me in place, clawing at my sanity. Each nightmare hung in the air, a reminder of everything I had fought against to stand here. And still I fought. I drew upon the energy of my friends, the connection we shared, and ignited that burning resolve within me once more. We wouldn't be consumed by darkness. We wouldn't bow down to despair. The shadows clawed at me, icy fingers wrapping around my throat, dulling my senses, choking the flame of hope within me. I gasped, struggling to breathe, trying to push them away, but they tightened their grip, whispering sweetly of surrender. I was close to giving in, so close to being lost. But then I reached deep within and remembered the laughter, the love, the strength that brought us together. "We can't let them win," I yelled, summoning every ounce of will. Pulses of light erupted from me, breaking through the suffocating shadows that bound me. I felt their grip loosen, even just for a moment, as our light enveloped each other, shimmering brighter, burning the darkness as I fought against every doubt that sought to prey upon my fears. Together, I pressed, igniting that bond. We had to be stronger, had to persevere. I imagined the light growing, stretching like fingers into the dark recesses, filling the void with our defiance. As the shadows recoiled, warping and twisting into horrid shapes, the room shimmered with energy, a surge of defiance that dared to drive back the dark. I could see it now, the way forward, a path illuminated by our adamant fight, an opening through the suffocating shadows that sought to devour us. We could do this. But just as I began to believe, the walls trembled violently, the ground cracking apart. The air thickened again, and low growls echoed, through the chaos as a few more twisted forms emerged from the shadows, rushing toward us with unsettling speed. I could see their teeth glistening in the dim light, their eyes burning with predatory hunger, and dread washed over me. "Get ready!" My heart raced. The shadows began to close in, and I could feel my friends expecting me to command us into battle against whatever horrors awaited us. Just then, shadows exploded from the walls, growing claws reaching out at us. Something inhuman darkened the edges of my vision, an entity born of nightmares looming just beyond our light. I felt my breath hitch, the darkness rolling toward us like a wave, its glistening sharp edges ready to strike. "No, we will not give in." But with that, a frigid grip seized my heart, twisting harshly, and I screamed, feeling the tendrils of darkness seeping into my skin, whispering of despair, taunting me. Yet amidst the panic, I searched for the glimmer, the spark of hope. Looking around, I saw the determination etched on the faces of my friends. I clung fiercely to their strength, reminded of the light we generated together. In that split second, I remembered why we fought. The warmth surged back, igniting the flicker like a flame in the storm. I wouldn't let the darkness win. I wouldn't allow it to snuff out the brightness. Together, I called a battle cry against the chaos. "Hold tight!" And as we summoned everything left within ourselves and flared the light against the roaring shadows, I felt the raw energy swirl and gather, pushing against the encroaching darkness with every ounce of our will. It was the moment everything hung in the balance, trembling. The shadows writhed, the room shook, and yet I felt something shift. The battles of our light surged forth, illuminating the body of horrors trying to consume me. "Now!" I yelled, fighting with everything inside me as our combined fire blazed forth, a beacon of pure resistance. The shadows screamed, their cries echoing throughout the room as our hope tore through the darkness with blinding force. Each pulse of light ripping through the night like stars forcing their way into a darkened sky. But as I watched the shadows shrink back, hissing and recoiling, I felt a strange sense of dread. They were not finished. They would try to rebound with renewed fury. With that thought burning brightly in my mind, I realized that the true fight had just begun. The true fight had just begun. The shadows writhed in a frenzy, twisting back into shapes that gave me chills. They regrouped, becoming more menacing, darker, giving off a feeling that bit into the air like frost. I could feel the terror creeping into my heart again, a reminder that they weren't done with us. I took a deep breath, trying to push away the fear, forcing my mind to focus. But the whispers started again, slithering through the air, entangled with a cacophony of voices that felt all too familiar. "You will regret standing against us," they taunted in unison, a chorus of despair that seeped into every pore, trying to pry my resolve apart. Before I could react, the air thickened, growing heavier with each passing moment. The shadows began morphing into dark figures, each more grotesque than the last. I could see twisted limbs and gnarled faces taking shape, eyes glowing with a sinister light, piercing through the darkness that enveloped us. I felt a surge of panic rise within me as one of them stepped forward, its mouth stretching wide into a menacing grin, sharp teeth glistening like daggers. A chill raced down my spine, every instinct telling me to run, to hide. But I stood, rooted in place, feeling my friend's presence next to me, their energy shooting through me like electricity. "Stay close," I shouted, my voice trembling but steady. We stood shoulder to shoulder, channeling every ounce of light we could muster, our brightness flickering like flames in a storm. The shadows howled, their sounds echoing like unholy laughter, clawing at the very fabric of our hope. Then, without warning, the shadows lunged at us, a wave of darkness swirling, striking out with a hungry ferocity. I felt the rush of cold air as they slammed against our protective light, my heartbeat syncing with the rhythm of the chaos. "Together," I cried, gripping my friend's hands tighter. The energy we shared flared, brightening as we forced back against the engulfing shadows, the bond we forged illuminating the night. But still, it felt like nothing we did would be enough. The dark figures thrashed and clawed, circling us like sharks smelling blood. Each time we pushed them back, they returned with relentless force, a creeping dread crawling into my mind, clamoring for attention. Those haunting voices carried tales of defeat, reminding me of past failures, echoing with haunting laughter that reverberated through the air. Let go of the past, the shadows hissed, their words wrapping around me, trying to choke out my hope. You cannot hold on forever. Images flashed before me, memories of every mistake, every moment I wished I could change. I fought to push them away, but the darkness was cunning, slithering into my thoughts, threatening to pull me into despair. Just then, a scream erupted from across the room, cutting through my reverie. I turned to see one of my friends engulfed by shadows, their hands reaching out in panic, faces twisted in fear as the dark tendrils coiled around them. My heart sank, knowing that each second could be their last. "No!" I shouted, trying to break free from the nearly paralyzing terror. I felt a surge of adrenaline course through me as I rushed toward them, pulling strength from the bond we shared, feeling the warmth of our hope propelling me forward. As I pushed through the tide of shadows, I grasped my friend's hand just in time, ready to pull them back into the light. But the chilling force of the darkness clung, wrapping like a vice around us, trying to rip us apart. I could feel panic rising, threatening to overwhelm me. The shadows shrieked and hissed, their noise rising to a fever pitch, filling the air with an eerie sense of urgency. "You will all fall," they taunted, voices merging into a maddening chant. The ground trembled beneath my feet as ice crept into my bones. I could see the walls distorting around us, the very reality of the room bending. Under the pressure of this darkness, writhing as if alive, my friends struggled, their face pale as the shadows pulled harder, clawing at their skin, leaving behind marks of darkness. I fought against the tendrils trying to encase me, my fingers slipping, losing my grip. Dread swirled in my stomach, threatening to swallow me whole. I remembered my earlier conviction, refusing to let despair control the moment. "Hold on!" I shouted, drawing strength from within, trying to envelop us both in a warm light. I envisioned pulling with all my strength, drawing every ounce of courage I had left. With a surge, I felt the shadows waver slightly, their grip trembling as our light clashed against their insatiable hunger. I could hear my friend's breath hitch as they gasped, looking into my eyes with pure terror. But just as I thought we were gaining ground, the shadows twisted again, erupting with an unearthly wail, tearing forward with renewed aggression, eager to claim us. They lunged, reaching out for us in a frenzy, limbs extending, teeth set to bite. In the chaos, a violent ripple surged through the room, the air thick with impending destruction. I felt the shadows seep into my mind, wrapping around my thoughts, fueling doubt and dread, whispering sweet promises of escape from the fight. "No!" I shouted again, pushing against them with each word, trying to regain control. But shadows filled the space, creeping closer, encircling us, ominous and overwhelming. How could I fight something that fed off fear? How could I stand firm when everything inside me screamed to give in? I could feel my heart pounding, a frantic drum in the world of chaos, echoing the desperation consuming the air around us. That's when I felt it, a flicker of cold, a hint of something darker lurking behind the shadows, something more sinister poised to emerge. My breath quickened as a foreboding sensation washed over me, soaking into my skin. I glanced around, dread pooling in the pit of my stomach. "What's happening?" I yelled, the sound almost lost in the cacophony. The air felt charged with malevolence, an ancient spirit barely concealed, waiting for the moment to unleash itself. The shadows pulsed violently, whipping around, as if excited by my fear. The very essence of the room seemed to twist, becoming more suffocating, a void of darkness eager to consume our fleeting hope. I sensed something monstrous lurking just out of sight, shifting within the shadows, feeding off the horror around us. Then, through the gloom, came a rumble that echoed deep and low, sending vibrations through the floor beneath me. The shadows twisted, forming a sinister shape, something far too big, a looming figure, pulsating with raw darkness that felt sentient, eyes burning like infernos in the night. "Join us," it growled, a voice that felt ancient, threading deep into my bones, entwining itself around my resolve. "Let me free you from your pain." The shadows erupted like a storm, howling deafeningly, threatening to engulf everything in their ravenous hunger, drowning out my will to fight. I felt myself teetering on the brink, the urge to surrender creeping in alongside the shadow's promise of escape. "No, I won't," I whispered, shaking with effort and fear, but standing firm. The room trembled, and as the figure stepped forward, its form shedding shadow, revealing more of its grotesque visage, my heart raced. I had to remain anchored. I had to find a way past this fear. Glancing back at my friends, their faces reflected my own turmoil, but held a smidge of hope. I closed my eyes for a moment, forcing myself to remember the light that we had fought for, the laughter we shared, the warmth that bound us. Together, I stitched the words into a mantra, clutching that warmth deep within my heart. As the figure lunged forward, shadows swirling around it like a storm, I knew that if we fell, everything would be lost. With every ounce of my will, I pushed back, shouting for my friends to join me, to focus, to find that light we held within ourselves, that fierce determination to resist. The light flared brighter, illuminating the dark like the dawn breaking through a storm. The shadows shrieked, their chilling wails filling the space as we pushed against the impending doom. But the darkness was relentless, ever hungry, the monstrous figure advancing toward us, eyes blazing with merciless hunger. I felt the chill seep into my bones again, sapping my strength, and I knew we had to act quickly. With a scream that pierced through the fear, I shouted, "Now!" and we combined our energy, letting it explode outward, a final surge aimed at the monstrous entity threatening to consume everything we knew. The shadows shrieked and trembled under the weight of our hopes, but they wouldn't relent, clawing back with an almost desperate ferocity. The figure distorted and swirled, a blend of darkness, twisting back and forth, revealing a glimpse of what could be its true form, something ancient and terrifying, a horror that bled into the edges of reality. The fight was far from over, and I realized that I was standing at the edge of something far worse than I had ever imagined. Despair loomed around us, thick and heavy, yet I could feel the light pulsing within, refusing to die. But would it be enough? Or would the shadows finally swallow our resolve whole, leaving us lost forever? Despair loomed around us, thick and heavy, yet I could feel the light pulsing within, refusing to die. But would it be enough? Or would the shadows finally swallow our resolve whole, leaving us lost forever? Every breath I took tasted of ash, and doubt gnawed at my heart as the monstrous figure lurked just outside the reach of our combined light. As I focused, the terrifying face before me morphed again, stretching unnaturally, becoming a twisted reflection of both my fears and failures. I saw lost friends, people I had disappointed, and every moment where I felt powerless. It played out like a nightmarish slideshow, each memory more tormenting than the last. They were shadowy figures whispering accusations that echoed harshly in the silence, words crashing against me, making me feel smaller and more fragile than ever. "Remember who you are," I murmured to myself, desperate to push back against the onslaught. I thought of my friends beside me, their faces hardened with determination mixed with fear. They were counting on me, on us. Together, we had to drag ourselves free from this mess. I could almost feel their hearts beating in sync with mine, a hopeful drum in the overwhelming silence. Then, like the coiling of a serpent, the shadows dipped dangerously close, their claws reaching out to snag at my skin. Every single nerve in my body screamed at me to turn and flee, but I refused to give in. Not now. Not after everything we'd fought for. I needed to embrace that warmth, that spark of defiance. It blazed in my chest, pushing back the icy fingers that sought to claw my soul into the abyss. A horrible roar erupted from the figure, its displeasure tangible, sending chills racing down my spine. I could feel the pressure building all around us, a suffocating embrace that threatened to crush our very beings. The shadows wriggled and thrashed, and I flinched at the desperation they carried. I was witnessing something primal, an essence of fear that yearned to trap and consume us whole. It lunged again, a pitiless beast straight out of the darkest corners of nightmare. I felt it right at the edge of my senses, a seething mass that hungered for our light, eyes burning with unrestrained malice. I had never faced anything like this before. The very foundation of my courage felt shaken, crumbling slightly under the weight of its darkness. We were just a few moments away from total annihilation, and I could taste the bitter tang of defeat in the back of my throat. But I steeled myself. "No, we are not afraid," I shouted, my voice rising above the howling chaos around us. Suddenly, a surge of energy pulsed from within the circle we formed, uniting us in a display of sheer will. I opened my eyes, staring into the eye of the churning darkness, a resolve unfurling in my chest. "Push back," I yelled, my voice echoing through the shifting shadows. My heart raced as we drew upon each other's strength, light spilling from our hands like molten gold, encircling us in a warm embrace. The darkness hesitated, recoiling for a split second, and I felt a flicker of hope bloom within my chest. Yet that moment of reprieve was fleeting. The unearthly figure shrieked, the sound slicing through the air like a blade. It surged forward, relentless and ravenous, eyes gleaming with a hunger that felt almost palpable. It was an entity that hungered not just for our light, but for our very essence. I could see tendrils of shadows reaching forward, seeking to entrap us in their grasp, a factory of despair churning, ready to strip away our will to fight. Just then, the ground shook violently, and cracks spread like veins through the earth. The very walls of reality twisted, blurring as if they were made of mist, each movement more unstable than the last. I stumbled as the vibrations rippled through my body, gripping my friends tighter, their frightened expressions mirroring my own. Disbelief surged through me. The shadows were not just dark. They were alive, intent on dragging us deeper into chaos. In that moment, everything swayed. I caught glimpses of the world outside, a distorted reflection of safety now lost among the chaos. Dread twisted tightly in my gut as I understood what the shadows desired: to plunge us into an eternal night, a purgatory filled with our regrets and fears. This realization felt like a noose tightening around my throat, every ounce of hope I had struggling against the weight of doom closing in. But then I remembered the battles we had fought together, the laughter we shared, the fragments of light we created even in darkness. "No, we won't be consumed by despair," I said with newfound conviction. Taking a deep breath, I focused deeply, reaching into every moment of joy I had ever experienced. Together, we conjured that warmth, letting it swell higher and higher, until it exploded from us in a blinding wave that pushed back against the shadows for a heartbeat longer than I thought possible. Time seemed to slow as the light surged outward, illuminating the darkness, showing that even in the abyss, slivers of brilliance can emerge. The monstrous shape faltered, recoiling from the brightness as if stung, the howling of torment reverberating through the air like a deranged symphony. I felt something shift within me. A tidal wave of empowerment rolled forth, drowning out the whispers of despair that had once beckoned me closer. But the shadows fought back, black tendrils lashing out violently, attempting to drag us down. I saw flashes of my friends being pulled under, their faces etched with frozen terror. In that moment, I refused to let fear override my determination. "We hold the light," I rallied, our energies weaving together in a greater tapestry of resistance. The shadowy figure shrieked violently again, throwing its weight against our resolve. A final push surged from us, the very essence of our bonds combined, unleashing a brilliance that shattered the darkness. Then everything snapped. The shadows writhed and twisted in frenzied terror, cracking, bursting apart like shattered glass as light overwhelmed their relentless grasp. I squinted against the brightness, the energy rippling through me, pulling us from the brink of despair, banishment closing down like slamming doors behind us. A moment of deathly silence fell as the darkness unraveled, leaving behind echoes of its haunting roar. The illumination glimmered as if victorious, and I held my breath, still gripped tightly by the energy forming around us. But just when I thought it was over, something remained. A last flicker of shadow darted into my peripheral vision, coiling back with malicious intent, lurching toward me, its eyes suffused with rage and an insatiable hunger, a reminder that darkness never truly dies. Together, I shouted one last time, feeling the pulse of light thrum through me. We unleashed the final vestige of our strength, directly into the voracious maw ready to snatch us back, igniting the air with an explosion of brilliance that blazed higher and brighter, finally consuming all that was dark. With that, I felt the weight of the shadows dissolve, a fading echo hanging in the air that warned of things to come but drifted away into silence. I collapsed on the ground, utterly exhausted, yet strangely at peace. I looked around, the room illuminated, all traces of darkness banished. My friends were there, breathing heavily, eyes wide yet shining. "We did it," I whispered, a flicker of disbelief mingling with relief. In that moment, I knew the shadows could return, but together, we had proven that light could push back against the crushing weight of despair. We were survivors, no longer alone, even in the face of darkness watching just beyond the edge of our reality. It stood there, lurking, waiting for a moment of weakness. But I swore that no matter what came next, we would always be stronger together, ready to fight against the shadows once again.